Back alleys like this are everywhere. Bike lanes are not. So today we're going to find out if we can use back alleys as bike lanes. Hey everyone, I'm Tom and this is Shifter, a channel about urban cycling, bike commuting, and the ways we get around our cities. And if you like this video, please consider subscribing or becoming a Shifter member for bonus content. So where did this idea come from? Well, using back alleys as bike lanes has been kicked around a lot over the years, usually by like entitled car drivers who want all the road to themselves and don't want to share. But I've been thinking about it a lot lately because my daily commute has been disrupted by a detour that was so bad and thoughtless that I've actually been using this back alley because it feels safer and better. And in using this back alley, I was like, hey, it's actually not that bad. Rather than the dirty, smelly, overlooked, gross back alleys that I had in my mind, what I found is this space is actually pretty free of cars, pretty slow, easy to get by, and not crowded, and not even that smelly most of the time. And so it's got me thinking like, hey, maybe there really is something to this idea. Of course, I'm not the first one to think of this idea. Back in 2018, for example, a pretty comprehensive report was put together looking at the idea of turning laneways into bikeways in the city of Toronto. And they went pretty deep. They looked at the feasibility of it, they looked at the costs, and they asked cyclists and residents what they thought of this idea. Basically, the report was born out of frustration with the slow pace of bike infrastructure construction in Toronto. The thought was maybe that back alleys could serve as bike routes temporarily until the network was built out. Joke's on them, the network ain't close to being built out still. The report came up with 6 ideas around this concept, and today I'm going to explore each of those ideas in the real back alleys of the downtown of my city here in Calgary. Number 1, people are already cycling in laneways. So yeah, that first finding in the report is kind of a no-brainer. Yes, I'm one of them. I was riding in the back alley because of that detour, and yeah, I'd say I occasionally see other people. There's someone riding a bike through an alley just down there. But I wouldn't say it's a lot, but it is true. Some people are already doing this. Number 2, there are mixed opinions on using laneways as bikeways. I mean, this one also seems like a bit of a no-brainer to me. I just started riding in alleyways and I already have mixed opinions about them. I mean, my first reaction to this idea was pretty negative for 2 reasons. One is like, why should car drivers who drive the polluting, destructive, loud beasts get all the great road space while cyclists be relegated to the dirty, stinky back alleys? And secondly, you're missing an opportunity. Bike lanes on streets make streets calmer, more pleasant places to be, reduces car dependence, is better for the environment, and we're missing that opportunity if we just shunt cyclists off to the back alley. So I didn't love the idea at first. But now that I've been riding them a bit, I can see the appeal for the idea. And for one thing, they're not actually all that dirty from what I've found. They're actually pretty clean. Is this a Canadian thing? I'm almost like embarrassed how clean our back alleys are. Like, where's our grit, Canada? But also, fighting for bike lanes can be exhausting, and if back alleyways can offer a respite from that, or even like a safe moment on your commute home, then why not? And so, yeah, even I have mixed opinions about this idea. Okay, I just take back the smelly part. I just passed the dumpster and it stunk. Number 3 is laneways aren't an alternative to bike lanes, but they can play a role in the cycling network. Okay, even thinking of these as a supplement to the cycling network is a tough one for me because there are so many barriers to overcome to make this a transportation network. Like, for one thing, the sight lines are terrible. Like, coming out of this alley, you just bam, I almost hit a pedestrian because nobody can see anybody, and you're right onto the road. Motorists were not expecting to see me. Like, you have to navigate these areas really carefully, and so that's a barrier. Also, there are dead ends like everywhere. This was just clearly not designed as a transportation network. So could it ever get there? Yeah, with some investment, but it would take a bit of doing to get there. The 4th finding in the report is laneway improvements can help unlock the potential of laneways for cyclists and pedestrians. So I see the point here. I mean, these alleys are pretty overlooked and neglected. The fact that it's sort of shared space, like there's not a lot of fast moving cars, there's like, you know, light posts in the middle of the lane, there's people walking, people who drive are driving really slowly. You know what it makes me think of is those sort of famous shared Japanese streets where they're narrow and the space is not split between people and everyone kind of shares the space in a way that encourages people to walk and take bikes and feels safer. It kind of, in a weird way, feels a bit like that, but there is definitely not a lot of investment in this space. I mean, most of the people you see back here are like coming in and out of buildings, or they're parking their car, or they're doing deliveries. It's really feels much more like a shared space than what you would see on a road, which is just completely dominated by cars. So in that way, it does sort of think that maybe there is some potential. But then I come to an intersection and I almost get run over, and it makes me rethink the whole thing. One other thing that you can't ignore is that the back alleys are, what I've seen today, are places for people in need. I think they're just quieter places out of the public eye, and we have a need for these spaces in society, and we should maybe think about doing a better job for people who need them. Number 5, cycling interventions should be combined with other improvements to make laneways better public spaces. Number 6, shared space principles can be applied to laneways to accommodate cyclists and other users. Maybe alleys are actually a better opportunity, is making them into better shared spaces. And it's hard for me to think about this because we don't have a lot of examples here in Calgary, but on my commute through this alley, actually there is one pretty good one. Just off the alley is this great ice cream shop. But on hot summer days when it gets busy, there's all kinds of people milling about here, and they do kind of spill out into this alleyway, and it does become sort of a fun shared space, much better than the typical back alleyway. And so it made me think that maybe there is some potential here, but it's hard to know how much potential until I had an idea. And to really see the potential of back alley laneways, I came here to the city of Montreal, which is becoming famous for its back alley laneways. This is one of hundreds of green lanes. These are back alleys that have been put to creative use through art and murals or greenery, or turning them into play space for kids, or just nice quiet walking places. This has been happening here for decades, just organically, just neighbors getting together and making use of that space behind their property, which was kind of forgotten and used for, garbage collection and parking your car. But over the years, the city has gotten involved and made funding available to make this a bit formal. And now there are literally hundreds of really interesting back alley spaces like this. It's even becoming part of the tourism identity of the city. There are bicycle tours and walking tours of these spaces, and you'll even find maps on tourism websites. And now that I'm back in Calgary, I'm facing that original question that this video started with: can back alley laneways be bikeways? And I think what we've seen is they're not really set up as transportation networks. There may be a little bit of potential there, but as bikeways, I think there's a lot of strikes against them. And even that report from Toronto back in 2018, it didn't exactly catch fire. There were just a handful of back alley laneway projects back then. There's been a bit of growth in that area, but not a lot. I think by and large, this idea has not really caught on in a lot of places. But that doesn't mean we can't do better with these back alley spaces. Let me show you something. I'm in this neighborhood here in Calgary, and over the years, neighbors just started painting art on their back laneway garage doors. It's pretty cool, right? It adds a nice little amenity to the neighborhood. It just makes it a bit more inviting and fun. And I really love this project here in Edmonton, and where this sort of forgotten back alley was transformed by this project that put a little addition at the back of a building, and a bakery moved in, and it really transformed it, turned it into a bit of a destination. And maybe my favorite project here in Calgary of the last decade is something called the Beltline Urban Mural Project, which community organizers brought together artists and landowners and local companies to create this amazing program that just paints murals on all sorts of blank walls around the downtown region. And a lot of these end up in back alleys, and it just brings a little something to these spaces that are so often overlooked. So while back alleys probably aren't great transportation networks, and they definitely serve a function because we still need to put our garbage bin somewhere, and there's lots of utilities that need to be implemented in deliveries, I think all of these things show that we can do a lot more with our neglected back alley laneways than we're doing now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.